The McKinley manufacturing plant in Toledo, Ohio, had been running since the 1970s, surviving market crashes, ownership changes, and automation waves. But now, in the middle of its busiest production season, everything stopped. A key CNC calibration unit, an imported state-of-the-art piece of machinery, had shut down. No lights, no diagnostics, no error codes, just silence. For 3 days, factory operations had been crippled. Engineers from Chicago, Detroit, and even Boston were flown in. Each one left without answers. The machine wouldn't even enter safe mode. The factory was losing nearly $40,000 per hour. The workers were nervous. The line supervisors were snapping at each other. And plant manager Howard Dorsey hadn't slept in 2 days. In a corner near the employee lockers, a girl no one recognized sat quietly, her hands in her lap, a small backpack at her feet. She wore faded jeans, a hoodie with black smudges on the sleeves, and a quiet stare. Her name was Ava Moreno. She was 17. Her father, Luis, worked the maintenance shift. He was one of the few employees who still used hand tools instead of tablets. His pay barely covered rent, but he never complained. Every Friday, Ava brought him lunch, always in the same brown bag, always with a folded note and a joke scribbled in the corner. This Friday was no different, except it was. The factory floor was unusually loud with silence. No machines, no humming, just echoing footsteps and hushed conversations. Luis greeted Ava near the lockers and apologized for the wait. "We're still trying to fix it," he muttered. "It's not working. They say the software is corrupted or the main circuit burned. No one knows." Ava looked past him, toward the machine tucked in the far corner under emergency lighting. "That's the CNC M79, right?" she asked. "The one with the 6-axis torque compensator." Luis turned slowly. "How do you know that?" Ava shrugged. "You brought home the tech manual a few months ago. I read it." Before he could respond, a commotion interrupted them. The last expert had walked off the floor, shaking his head. "Your system's bricked," he said flatly to Dorsey. "I'd scrap the unit, order a new one." Dorsey looked like someone had just handed him a pink slip. "And that'll take months," he snapped. "We don't have months." Ava watched the exchange, then she stepped forward. "I think I know what's wrong." The words weren't loud, but they cut through the room. The heads turned. Dorsey blinked. "Excuse me?" Luis pulled her back gently. "Misha, don't." But Ava didn't back away. "It's not bricked. The encoder's feedback loop is stuck. It's sending a return signal with no endpoint. If you realign the driver to 0 and reset the sync logic, it should boot." A long silence followed. Someone scoffed. Another whispered, "Who is she?" Dorsey squinted. "You're just a mechanic's kid." Ava nodded. "Yeah, but I still know what I'm talking about." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. Dorsey looked at Luis, then back at Ava. "Fine, you've got 10 minutes, you break it. It's already broken anyway." Ava walked over to the machine, slung her backpack down, and pulled out a handmade USB interface. A few techs leaned closer. She opened the side panel and bypassed the primary boot circuit, typing quickly. Within 3 minutes, the main screen flickered, then it blinked to life. A long beep followed. The diagnostic system initialized. A low hum rose from the machine. A green light appeared. It had powered on. Ava stepped back slowly as the green light held steady on the control panel. The machine was awake, humming like a living thing after years of silence. The workers, who had been watching from a distance in disbelief, now moved closer, drawn to the impossible. One of the factory technicians rushed over, his eyes fixed on the display. "It's actually running the initialization loop," he whispered. "That's a clean boot." Another whispered, "She didn't even use the default override. She built her own interface." Mr. Dorsey stood there motionless, his mouth slightly open. He wasn't a man who was easily stunned, but this was beyond anything he had expected. Ava remained still, calm, almost expressionless. Not because she didn't care, but because she had been imagining this moment in her head for so long, it almost felt normal. She had read the entire manual cover to cover the night her father had accidentally brought it home, thinking it was junk. She had studied the diagrams, reverse-engineered the logic, and created a USB tool from spare parts in her bedroom. She never thought she'd use it in real life. She just wanted to see if it would work. Now it had brought an entire factory back online. Luis approached slowly, his eyes glossy with disbelief and pride. You actually fixed it, he said, almost afraid to believe it. Ava nodded. The sync logic was chasing itself in a loop. It just needed a restart with clean coordinates. Her father didn't understand all the words, but he understood what it meant. She wasn't just smart, she was something else entirely. Something rare, something special. And she had done it without a lab, without help, and without even being asked. Mr. Dorsey finally found his voice. "Where did you learn that?" Ava looked at him and said, "At home, on my own." A silence followed, and then Dorsey laughed, not mockingly, but out of sheer disbelief. 3 professionals flew in from across the country. They charged us thousands and couldn't even diagnose the problem. And you, he turned to Luis. "This is your daughter?" Luis nodded slowly. Dorsey turned back to Ava. "What are your plans after school?" Ava hesitated. "I don't know. We can't afford college. I was planning to work at the body shop with my dad." Dorsey shook his head. "Not anymore." He reached for his phone. "We're starting an apprenticeship program this year. You're going to be our first student. Paid, mentored, and when you're ready, we'll fully sponsor your engineering degree, if you want it." Ava looked at her father. He was speechless, but his eyes said everything. She looked back at Dorsey. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that a lot." By the next week, Ava was back at the plant, not as a visitor, but as an official apprentice. She had a badge, a workstation, and her own terminal login. The men who had once laughed now called her Miss Moreno with respect. Some even asked her to explain the restart sequence she used. She showed them patiently, humbly, never letting it go to her head. Word of her fix spread beyond the factory. One local news station covered the story. A few online blogs picked it up. But Ava didn't care about attention. She only cared about solving problems. And the machine she had saved, it never glitched again. It ran smoother than ever before. Just like the girl who had once sat quietly in the shadows, now standing in the center of it all, proving that brilliance doesn't come from money or titles or privilege. It comes from hunger, effort, and a mind that refuses to stay small.